Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fun with Flags. I'm your friendly neighborhood soda, joined by 50 Shades of Thor. How's it going?
Hing-a-ling-a-ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling.
Yeah, what is that hilling-a-ling-a-ling thing? Like, is that actually part of it, or?
Happy Leif Erikson Day. Hing-a-ling-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling.
Sure.
This is the second time in a row, Mr. Soda, that it's your topic and I'm using, and my name is literally a SpongeBob SquarePants reference.
Gotcha. I've never seen the show, so there we go.
That's the beauty of it. You don't know the reference, but I did.
And funny enough, it's not streaming here in Canada.
Freaking streaming rights.
Yeah. But anyways, this is Fun with Flags, where every week we teach each other something different about our respective native countries. So this week is my turn, and while what I'm going to be talking about is a Canadian thing, it is actually about the Vikings, really. As you can tell in the background, it is actually about L'Ans Aux Meadows, which up until what I believe was the 1960s? Yeah, up until the 1960s, people had thought that Columbus was the first person to cross over to North America that there was evidence for. But in the 1960s, some archaeologists discovered in Newfoundland remnants of a Viking settlement that actually gives credence to the old Vineland tales from Norse mythology. And those Vineland tales were basically stories about the Norse Vikings, Leif Erikson and whatnot, leaving and going and inhabiting a land far off. And then all of a sudden they find L'Ans Aux Meadows and said, "Oh shit, these are true." So did you know? Have you ever heard of L'Ans Aux Meadows before?
I've not heard of L'Ans Aux Meadows, but I have heard repeatedly about the whole the Vikings discovered America first and then left, and then Columbus arrived a couple of hundred years later.
Yeah. So just as a big start off, basically it's first excavated in the 1960s. It's a Norse settlement dating back approximately 1,000 years ago. It is located on the northernmost tip of Newfoundland in Canada, near St. Anthony. And with carbon dating estimates between 990 to 1050 CE, tree ring analysis dating back to the year 1021, and a mean carbon date of 1014 overall, L'Ans Aux Meadows is the only undisputed site of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact of Europeans with the Americas outside of Greenland. It is noticeable as evidence of the North presence in North America and for its possible connection with Leif Erikson, as mentioned in the Saga of the Greenlanders and the Saga of Eric the Red, which were written down in the 13th century. Archaeological evidence found at the site indicates that L'Ans Aux Meadows may have served as a base camp for Norse exploration of North America, including regions of the South. It spans 30.85 square miles of land and sea. It contains the remains of 8 buildings constructed with sod over a wood frame, in excess of 800 Norse objects that have been unearthed at the site. Evidence of iron production and bronze, bone, and stone artifacts have been identified. In 1968, it was designated a National Historic Site of Canada, and in 1978, it was designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And currently, Parks Canada is who is maintaining it on a daily basis. Any questions so far?
So, how far exactly did the Vikings spread that we know of?
So you kind of cut off a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. I asked, how exactly far in North America did the Vikings spread that we know?
That I'm not sure. But Newfoundland literally is like the easternmost island of Canada.
Do you have maps or something like that so I can picture it in my head?
Yeah, for sure. I believe I do have a map in here. It's just a map of the base. Yeah, just give me a second here. I'll bring you a map of Newfoundland here.
Yeah. It's a good thing Soda is a fast looker-upper.
Yeah, it's a good thing I have 2 monitors. Okay, so this is Newfoundland right here, just using a quick Google search. So this is Newfoundland. Like I said, it's on the furthest eastmost of Canada. And L'Ans Aux Meadows is, I believe, right up in here.
Okay.
Yeah. Based on what I saw on a map on Wikipedia where they had a little dot, I believe it is up in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, Newfoundland literally comes from Newfoundland. That's literally how the Vikings named it.
And if you want to hear some weird language, listen to Newfies talk.
Oof.
It's true. It's just like, is that even a language?
Is it any similar to Icelandic or Finnish? Because those languages are wild.
It's the best way to put it. It sounds like that, but it has the inflections of Yiddish.
Okay.
Which is weird. Okay, so the term L'Ans Aux Meadows is a French-English name which can be translated as Grassland Bay, or literally the bay with the grasslands. How the village itself came to be L'Ans Aux Meadows is debated. One possibility, it is a corruption of the French designation L'Ans Aux Meadows, which means jellyfish cove. A more recent supposition is that the name derives from L'Ans à la Médée, which is Medea Cove, the name it bears on an 1862 French naval chart. Whether Medea or Medusa, it is possible the name refers to a French Navy vessel. The shift to meadows from Medusa and Medea may have occurred because of folk etymology linking the name to the open landscape around the cove with many meadows. So it's basically, hey, it's this. Okay, we'll call it that.
Yeah, it's Newfoundland. Let's call it Newfoundland. Same basic principle.
Basically.
So Medusa is the French word for jellyfish?
Apparently, it's not one that I'm familiar with, so it's probably true French. Like the French I kind of grew up with was more like a slang version of French, and not a word that I recall hearing.
No, because in Hebrew, the word for jellyfish is Medusa. Which is weird because there's also the Medusa from Greek mythology, which always really tripped me up. It's like, how is that a Medusa?
Yeah, maybe because all the snakes in the hair kind of work.
Yeah, but there's like tendrils versus snake hair.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so a little bit of a backstory before this. So there is the indigenous occupation. Before the Norse arrived in Newfoundland, there is evidence of occupations by 5 indigenous groups at the site of L'Ans Aux Meadows, the oldest dated at roughly 6,000 years ago. None of them are around, unfortunately, during the Norse occupation, and the most prominent of these early occupations were by the Dorset people who occupied the site about 300 years before the Norse. Radiocarbon dating radiocarbon dating range for these groups are 4,000 to 1,000 BCE for the Maritime Archaic tradition, 1,000 to 500 for the Grosswater tradition, 400 to 750 CE for the Middle Dorset, 800 to 850 CE for the Cowhead group and Beaches tradition, and 1,200 to 1,500 CE for the Little Passage tradition.
So CE is like before Jesus Christ?
Yes. Actually, I think it's after. It's changed so much that I actually have a hard time keeping up with that.
I mean, it's easy for me to follow BC AD. What's BCE?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know. Like I said, it's changed so much. You know what? Let's Google BCE.
This has become the episode of Random Googles.
Okay, so BCE versus AD and BCE versus CE. What do they mean? Okay, fun. We're going to take a little detour. So the AD was Anno Domini, which means in the year of our Lord. So CE stands for Common Era.
Okay.
The same years as AD does, just in a more secular way. So the year 22 CE is the same year as 2022 AD.
Okay.
So basically, it just works the same. So that I said that was CE, so that's Common Era. So that that would be after biblical times.
Yeah, okay. After the birth of Christ, that is.
Basically. Okay, so the Norse settlement at L'Ans Aux Meadows, like I said earlier, has been dated to 1000 CE with a mean carbon date of 1014, an assessment that tallies with the relative dating of artifact and structure types. So a 2021 Nature study using radiocarbon analysis of the 3 separate tree ring samples found at L'Ans Aux Meadows, evidence from the anomaly in atmospheric sea concentrations in the year 993, I don't know how they do that, pinpointed 1021 as a date of Norse activity at L'Ans Aux Meadows. Anthropologist John Steinberg has suggested that the site may have been occupied at least sporadically for perhaps about 20 years. Eleanor Barraclough, a lecturer in medieval history and literature at Durham University, suggests the site was not a permanent settlement, but instead a temporary boat repair facility. She notes that there are no findings of burials, tools, agriculture, or animal pens, suggesting the inhabitants abandoned the site in an orderly fashion. According to a 2019 PNAS study, there may have been Norse activity in L'Ans Aux Meadows for as long as a century. There is no way of knowing how many people lived at the site at any given time. Archaeological evidence of the dwelling suggests that it had the capacity of supporting about 30 to 160 people. The entire population of Greenland at that time was about 2,500, meaning that the L'Ans Aux Meadows site was roughly less than 10% of the Norse settlement in Greenland. As Julian D. just for full disclosure, I'm using Wikipedia here for my notes. As Julian D. Richards notes, it seems highly unlikely that the Norse had sufficient resources to construct a string of such settlements. So that's actually news to me. Like I'm not going to lie, I haven't, outside of what I learned in high school or in school, I don't really know much. So just hearing that, it's news to me that it might not have been a permanent settlement.
I mean, I do all my research for these episodes ahead of time, so finding out the whole story about Purim not really being historical fact, it was more of a mythology. That was a shock to me too, but it didn't happen on camera. So
I know. I did my preparation. I found my videos and I found what I needed, but I mean, I didn't read it through. Today, the area mostly consists of open, grassy lands, but 1,000 years ago, there were forests that were convenient for boat building, house building, and iron extraction. The remains of 8 buildings labeled A through J were found, and I actually do have them here. I did save that picture. So this is what the layout looks like. Site A is known as the large hall. Site B is a house. Site C is a hut. D, where is D? D is on the far right there. It is.
I see it.
The smallest of the 3 halls. Right above that is site E, which is also a hut. F at the very top is the leader's hall. So basically the leader, the village, the king, whatever you want to call it. Below that, you've got another hut. And then J, all the way on the left there, is a smelting hut.
And where is H exactly?
Good question. I don't know why they excluded H and I.
Always half-assing things.
Oh yeah. Jeez. The remains of 8 buildings, they are believed to have been constructed of sod placed over a wooden frame. Based on associated artifacts, the buildings were identified as dwellings or workshops. The largest, which is F, the leader's hall, measured 28.8 meters by 15.6 meters, or 94 feet by 51 feet, and consisted of several rooms. The 3 smaller buildings, B, C, and G, I'm going to bring those back up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the small buildings, B, C, and G, may have been workshops or living quarters for lower status crew or slaves, so basically the staff. Yes.
Question though. So now with these structures, are we talking about the people that settled in Newfoundland before the arrival of the Vikings or after the arrival of the Vikings?
This is the Vikings.
Okay, so these are
now we're actually getting into the Viking settlement itself. This is the time of the Vikings.
We took a deep road to before the Vikings arrived, and now we're actually on the Vikings trail.
Yes, I just gave a little bit of a run-up just about the etymology of the area and stuff like that for the Vikings, but now we are fully there. Workshops were identified as iron smithy, which is building J, containing a forge and iron slag, a carpentry workshop, which is building D, which generated wood debris, and a specialized boat repair area containing worn rivets. Other things found at the site consisted of common everyday Norse items, including a stone oil lamp, a whetstone, a bronze fastening pin, a bone knitting needle, and part of a spindle. Stone weights, which were found in building G, may have been part of a loom. The presence of the spindle and needle suggests that women as well as men inhabited the settlement. So I also do have a picture here. This is a recreation of what it would have looked like. So this is what they think it would have looked like back in the day.
Cool. Yeah. You can definitely tell the Viking aesthetic because I don't know if you knew this, but when Vikings sort of landed on a new land, they used to take their boats with them to the shore and live with them for a couple of days before they started a proper settlement. And if you bring that picture up again, you can really tell that it does. Some of these structures do look a little bit like their boats. That's fascinating.
I'm gonna actually
reconstruction.
This is what the place looks like now, so you can still see remnants of it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a picture.
This is how it looks like now. The other picture was like and an estimation of what it looked like back then.
Exactly. Like you can still go there and you can still see the giant huts covered in grass and stuff like that.
Because it's been several hundred years, it's now covered in grass and whatnot.
Food remains include butternuts, which is significant because they do not grow naturally north of New Brunswick. Their presence, the nuts, probably indicates the Norse inhabitants traveled further south to attain them. There is evidence to suggest that the Norse hunted an array of animals that inhabited the area, including caribou, wolf, fox, bear, lynx, marten, many types of birds and fish, seal, whale, and walrus. Unfortunately, though, the area is no longer rich in game due to, in large part, to the harsh winters, which, yes, that area of Canada really gets hit when it comes to winters. Like, it's brutal.
Okay.
So this forces, unfortunately, the game to either hibernate or venture south as the wind, deep snow, and sheets of ice completely cover the area. These losses made the harsh winters very difficult for the Norse people to live. So this lack of game supports archaeologists' beliefs that the site was inhabited by the Norse for a relatively short time. So now we're at the discovery of the place. Any other questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. So now we are on to discovery. So in 1960, the archaeological remains of Norse buildings were discovered in Newfoundland by Norwegian husband and wife team of explorer Helge Ingstad and archaeologist Anne Stein Ingstad. Based on the idea that the Old Norse name Vinland, mentioned in the Icelandic Songos, means wine land, historians have long speculated that the region contained wild grapes. So because of this, the common hypothesis, remember, this is before the discovery of this place. So the common hypothesis before the Ingstad's theories was that the Vineland region existed somewhere south of the northern Massachusetts coast, because naturally everything is in the States, because that is roughly as far north as grapes grow naturally. Now, it turns out that is false. Wild grapes have grown and still grow along the coast of New Brunswick and in the St. Lawrence River Valley of Quebec. The archaeological excavation at L'Ans Aux Meadows was conducted from 1960 to 1968 by an international team led by Miss Ingstad. The Ingstads doubted this hypothesis, saying that the name Vinland probably means land of meadows and includes a peninsula. This speculation was based on the belief that the Norse would not have been comfortable settling in areas along the American Atlantic coast. This dichotomy between the two views could have possibly been due to the two historic ways in which the first vowel sound of Vineland could be pronounced. So basically, like we were learning last week, just one slight change can completely change the word.
Etymology, people, look it up.
Pretty much. The discovery of butternuts in the North stratum of the bog on the site of by Parks Canada archaeologists implies that the North ventured at least as far as the coast of New Brunswick, where butternuts grow and have grown for centuries alongside wild grapes. The Norse thus would have had contacts with the grapes of the Songos. So also in 1960, George Decker, a citizen of the small fishing hamlet of L'Ans Aux Meadows, led Helge Ingstad to a group of mounds near the village that the locals called the quote-unquote Old Indian Camp. These mounds, covered with grass, look like the remains of houses. Helge Ingstad and Anne Stein, the Ingstads, carried out 7 archaeological excavations there from 61 to 68. They investigated the remains of 8 buildings and the remains of perhaps a 9th. They determined that the site was of indeed Norse origin because of definitive similarities between the characteristics of structures and artifacts found at the site compared to sites in Greenland and Iceland from around 1000 BC. So that makes L'Ans Aux Meadows the only confirmed Norse site in North America outside of Greenland. It represents the farthest known extent of European exploration and settlement of the New World before the voyages of Christopher Columbus almost 500 years later. Historians have speculated that there are other Norse sites, or at least Norse Native American trade contacts in the Canadian Arctic. In 2012, possible Norse outposts were identified in Nanook at Tanfield Valley on Baffin Island, as well as Nunavik, Willows Island, and the Availik Islands. Point Rose in southwestern Newfoundland, shown by National Geographic and the BBC as a possible Norse site, was excavated in 2015 and 2016, unfortunately, without any evidence of a Norse presence being found. Oh, all right. Any other questions? Because I need to take a drink.
Okay, good. Well, while you do that, I'll ask my question. So these butternuts, how exactly did they find them in the archaeological excavations?
Basically, it's just like when you're digging for dinosaur bones, or whatever. You just start digging around, and whatever comes up with the soil, that's probably how they found them.
because there are actual evidence in Israel and other territories conquered by the Romans in the region. There's actual pieces of food, and I'm talking like fruits and grains and snacks all laid out on plates on tables in people's houses. And if I'd known about that, if I'd known that was going to come up in the conversation, I would have asked my dad to send me some of the pictures, because he actually works a lot with these pictures. But that's really how they found the food in their original state, untouched for hundreds, maybe thousands of years.
Yes, sometimes you do get that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, they're obviously not edible these days, but it was pretty cool to just. Someone must have put it on the table in the ready for like a meal, or to just host some guests, and left for whatever reason when the city was attacked or whatever. The house got buried, and the foods just remained perfectly placed on the table while the rest of the house collapsed around it.
I've seen things like that at like Pompeii and stuff like that, where they
but this. Yeah, but I'm not talking about Pompeii, because Pompeii naturally was buried by a volcano. I'm talking about the whole city was burning. People left the house collapsed, but the food itself stayed on the table untouched because the roof sort of caved in, and the food was
basically created like a vacuum.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty cool. Natural phenomenon like that is very fascinating.
Yeah, and there's other evidence of sites like of these things, like actual. You go into some of the other rooms in these buried houses, you find combs with actual traces of hair still on it. You find braids that were cut off during, I don't know, a grooming session or whatever. Traces of beards from people. Like one of these days, I gotta get my dad to send you these some of these pictures. They're pretty wild.
So along the beard and the hair thing, that really is whenever they discover mummies and they still have their hair. You're like, whoa.
There's a difference there, because the mummies were made specifically with the intention of preserving.
Oh, I'm not talking Egyptian mummies. Sorry, I'm talking things like dog mummies and natural mummies and stuff like that. Not ancient Egypt.
So like in Central America, they do that a lot. They found like the remains of mummified children that the people sacrificed to appease the gods or whatever, and they were found literally in perfect condition.
So have you ever heard of Utsi the Iceman?
I think I did.
So they discovered him in this, I think it was the Alps. They thought it was like somebody who died relatively recently, but it turns out he'd been dead since like early human times, and they were able to find traces of his last meal in his stomach.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what the ice does to you.
Hey, I actually, there is a documentary on it on YouTube. I will send you. It's actually worth the hour watch if you're into that kind of stuff.
I think I heard about it through Watch Mojo and stuff.
Yeah, not me wasn't Watch Mojo, but I did come across it when I was looking at mummies and stuff like that when I was a kid, when I was fascinated with Egypt and stuff like that, and I ended up coming across that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think there's all kinds of different styles of mummies, but I'm pretty sure the word mummy itself and the concept originated in Egypt because of the way they used to bury their dead.
Mummy origin of word.
I did say I think.
Yeah. So the first mummy to be wrapped up comes from the Chinchorro culture of South America in the area of southern Peru and northern Chile. The oldest of these mummies was a person who died in 550 BC, or over 7,000 years ago. These Chinchorro mummies are 2,000 years older than the mummies in ancient Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, but enough about mummies. We're going back to the Vikings. So now, after discovery, obviously, in November of 1968, my mom would have been about...
Don't give me your age.
My mom would have been about 5 months old. The government of Canada named the archaeological site a National Historic Site of Canada. And that is places that have been designated by the Federal Minister of the Environment on the advice of the Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada as part of national historic significance. As of January 2021, there are 999 National Historic Sites, 172 of which are administered by Parks Canada. The remainder are administered or owned by other levels of government or private entities. Yeah. And apparently there's 2 sites in France. Weird.
Okay.
Yeah, one of them I think has to do with Vimy Ridge, which is a big thing over here to do with the World Wars. So yeah, that happened in November of 1968. The site was also named a World Heritage Site in 1978 by UNESCO. And a World Heritage Site is a landmark or area with legal protection by the International Convention administered by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. They are okay. Well, I didn't, and there's probably others that don't. Okay. That's the only reason I read out loud. So World Heritage Sites are designated by them for having cultural, historic, scientific, or other form of significance. The sites are judged to contain cultural and natural heritage around the world considered to be of astounding value to humanity. So I think that's pretty cool.
I mean, there's a lot of areas in Israel where you travel and you see the UNESCO flags everywhere. Yeah. So that's how I knew about it.
Yeah, I actually didn't even know what it stood for. Like, obviously, you hear UNESCO, but I didn't know. After L'Ans Aux Meadows was named a National Historic Site, the area and its related tourist programs have been managed by Parks Canada. After the first excavation was completed, 2 more were done. 2 more of the site were ordered by Parks Canada. The excavations fell under the direction of Bent Schonbach from 73 to 75 and Birgitta Wallace in 76. Following each period of excavation, the site was reburied to protect and conserve the cultural resources naturally. And just for fun, I actually do have a picture of what it is like, what it would have looked like on the interior of one of those things. So this is what it would have looked like inside one of these houses.
Okay.
So basically, if you saw How to Train Your Dragon, you're good.
Yeah, this is basically it.
Basically, oh god, that's
How the dragons.
I should rewatch the trilogy. It's been a while.
It's really good.
It's an underrated animated trilogy.
I don't think it's underrated. I think people love it. It might be not as talked about.
That's what I was referring to, the underrated. Yeah, I'm like, a lot of people love it, and everybody I know who's seen it loves it. But it's just compared to the Toy Story movies and stuff like that. I feel like it's kind of, I don't know, lost.
Well, they were hugely popular at their day, but I think after the last one came out, people just stopped talking about it for whatever reason.
Yeah, would you say that trilogy follows like the original Star Wars trilogy structure? You got the first one, which is the origin story, the New Hope. The second one is very Empire, and for me, is the darkest of the 3. And then the last one is kind of like a mixture of the 2.
So by that logic, Hiccup's mother is Yoda.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember. Did
he exiled himself? She exiled herself.
Yeah. And I can't remember. Did Stoic die in the second one or the third one?
He died in I believe it's the second one.
Yeah. And he comes back in the third one.
As the Force Ghost, basically.
As a Force Ghost. Yeah, he's a Viking Force Ghost.
What have we stumbled on? Yeah, I'm just double checking. I'm pretty sure it is the second one that Stoic dies. Yeah, because it says right here, the hypnotized Toothless fires a plasma bolt towards Hiccup, but Stoic pushes him out of the way and is killed instead. Yeah, okay. If I didn't have my new wrestling video game, I probably would sit down and watch a trilogy tonight. But
can you just recall and remember the memes when that first trailer came out of the last one, where with Hiccup in the future Hiccup with the beard and everything, and people saying it was literally a fusion between Thor and Captain America.
In a way, if you could get Jake Gyllenhaal to play it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, Jake Gyllenhaal didn't play Hiccup.
No. But I mean, if you were to get Jake Gyllenhaal as a live.
Oh, right.
No, it's the great Jay Baruchel, Canadian actor.
Yeah, Canada.
Okay, so the remains of 7 of the North houses are on display at the National Historic Site. So that's pretty cool. You can go there and still see some of the remains. North of the Norse remains are reconstructed buildings built in the late 20th century as part of an interpretive display for the National Historic Site. The remains of an Aboriginal hunting camp are also located at the site southwest of the Norse remains. Other amenities at the site include picnic areas and visitors. So actually, that is a place I really would like to go. I would go in the summer though, but yeah, there's a lot of I've driven across Canada and I've seen my fair share in BC, anyways. But there's so much I still don't know about this country.
It's the second largest country in the world.
Territory-wise. Yeah, in terms of landmass.
Yeah,
it's not so much.
Yeah, it's weird that Canada is so much bigger than the U.S., but the population in the U.S. far outweighs the population in Canada.
Well, it's typical of the Americans. They always want to be number one in everything. So I'm just kidding to all my viewers. We love you.
I mean, I was going to take it in a different direction. Americans like to reproduce a lot more than the Canadians do. So.
That's true. They are like jackrabbits that way.
I mean, have you seen the movie Idiocracy?
Not yet. I haven't, but I love how during the last administration in the United States, people were saying that it was that movie come to life.
You did not see that movie?
Somehow that is one of those rare ones that not a rare one. That is one of those ones that just it's slipped through the cracks with me. Like I've always been aware of it. I've just never sat down and watched it.
You gotta watch it sometime. And fun fact, I have my own fan theory about that movie.
Well,
by now you
should sit down and watch it. And I'd like to hear more of it. But what's your theory?
So by now you're probably familiar with the premise.
Yeah. It's been long enough.
Yeah, guy wakes up in 500 years, finds out that the whole world are idiots.
Yeah, with Terry Crews as the president.
Yeah. Fun fact, what's his name?
Actually, that I don't know.
Yeah. President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. Schmodown!
I like that.
Yeah, so my theory, stay with me here. This is going to upset a lot of people, but I don't care. My theory is, it's not that the whole world just became stupid and Luke Wilson is the only smart guy around. It's only the US. The rest of the world moved on.
I could believe that, actually.
And you know what? I actually applied the same theory to the original Planet of the Apes movies. Because you never see any part of the world outside of
America,
of New York or the other place from the third one.
You want to say San Francisco?
I think so. Yeah.
What's that one again? That's Escape, right?
Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Yeah. But wait a minute. Conquest. Where does that take place? Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Conquest. That's the second one, right?
No, that's the fourth one.
That takes. Good question.
So basically, the first two.
So Escape is Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. So the other side of the. So basically, from one side of the U.S. to the other, the first two, the Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes, are all in New York, right? So you see Grand Central Station in the second one. Remains of it.
Yes. And I'm just looking at the synopsis for the fourth one for Conquest, and while it is America, it doesn't actually say in this.
Yeah, I watched those movies a week or two ago. Again, the fourth one just says North America, 1981, and it doesn't say where. So maybe America just became a police state by that point. If you actually watch the movie, it sort of makes sense.
Foreshadowing.
But there's that military base in the third one that they go back to in the fifth one, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which is somewhere around the Los Angeles area. So that's my theory. All the Planet of the Apes movies, the original ones, not the new ones, they all take place in America. The rest of the world moved on, and only America just became a continent of apes.
I will alter that, and I will say North America, just because if something happened in the States, it probably would have happened to Canada as well.
I think Canadians are smart enough to close their borders by that point.
True, but I've always said Canada is America light without the crazy.
I mean, I always say that Canada is Diet America. So
there you go. We're America Zero.
Not quite. Diet America.
Okay, so to wrap up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But I kind of feel bad because I hate Diet Coke or Coke Zero because of the horrible aftertaste.
So that is the aspartame, the sugar substitute, and the only reason I drink that stuff is because majority of my family is diabetic. So it's all that's available at my grandparents' place. So I have to suffer through it if I want to pop.
I always have this argument with my dad. He claims that Diet Coke and Coke Zero are more healthy. And I'm like, no, dude, it's poison either way. So if you're going to poison yourself, might as well enjoy the taste.
No, the only difference
I don't drink Diet Poison. That's all I'm going to say.
Really, I don't know why they call it diet. I think it was basically a marketing ploy to fool the consumer, basically, is what it was. But no, they are for people who cannot naturally ingest sugar. So that's why they have those drinks with sugar substitutes, hence Diet Coke, Coke Zero. Coke Zero and Diet Coke are the same damn thing. And just they changed the name because Diet Coke is not that appealing. It's basically all it is.
As a way to sell more of the same product.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Coke Zero either.
Yeah, just drink regular poison, guys. You're already poisoning yourself. What's the harm in adding some flavor to it?
If you really want to feel like you're living, drink Coke Zero without caffeine. Oh.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was good. The one can after that, I'm like, no,
never touching it again.
No. Okay, so to wrap up our conversation, so a few times throughout this, I have mentioned a place called Vinland, also known as Vineland or Wineland, which was an area of coastal North America explored by the Vikings. According to traditions, that's where Leif Erikson, who is this guy, Leif Erikson, son of Eric. It was landed there about 1,000 years ago, nearly 5 centuries before Columbus. So the name does appear in the Vineland sagas and describes Newfoundland and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Much of the geographical content of the sagas corresponds to present day knowledge of transatlantic travel and North America. Adam of Bremen, a German cleric, was the first European to mention Vinland. In a text he's composed around 1073, he wrote that he, the Danish king Sven Estridsson, which is a little too close to estrogen, also told me of another island discovered by many in that ocean. It is called Vinland because vines grow there on their own accord, producing the most excellent wine. Moreover, that unsown crops abound there, we have ascertained not from fabulous conjecture, but from the reliable reports of the Danes. This excerpt is from a history Adam composed of the archbishops of Hamburg, Bremen, who held ecclesiastical authority over Scandinavia at the time. Norse sagas are written versions of older oral traditions. There are 2 Icelandic sagas, commonly known as the Saga of the Greenlanders and the Saga of Eric the Red, that describe the experiences of Norse Greenlanders who discovered and attempted to settle land to the west of Greenland, which they called Vineland. The saga suggests that the Vineland settlement failed because of conflicts within the Norse community, as well as between the Norse and the native people they encountered, whom they called the Skraeling. The L'Ans Aux Meadows site served as an exploration base and winter camp for expeditions headed to southwest of the southward into the Gulf of Lawrence. The settlements of Vinland mentioned in these 2 sagas, Liesberdir and Hop, have both been claimed to be L'Ans Aux Meadows sites. And that's it.
Okay.
And I actually do have a map here from the 1590s. So the 1590 Skalholt map showing Latinized Norse replacements in North America. So you have Land of the Risi, which is a mythical location. You have Greenland. You have Helluland, which is Baffin Island here in Canada. Markland, which is the Labrador Peninsula. Land of the Skraeling, which unfortunately there is the location has been undetermined as of this point, and the promontory of Vinland, which is the Great Northern Peninsula. So, yeah.
So, question: which one is the landmass and which one is the sea?
So the landmass the landmass is basically the border.
Okay, so everything in the middle, that's the
everything in the middle is the sea. Yes.
Actually, oh yeah, so the one at the bottom right, that's Great Britain and Ireland.
Yep.
And right there, I can see Iceland. That's Greenland.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah, Helluland, Markland, Skraeling, Goodland, which Gronland.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, the map doesn't really look like that. But
of course.
You can still see the, the points that are mentioned.
Yeah, but so that's not a Viking map. That's the Spaniards map.
So that is the Skelholt map, and that is Skelholt is a historical site in the south of Iceland at the river Svita. So in the late 16th century, Sigurður Stephenson, a young teacher from Skelholt and grandson of a Skelholt bishop, used the available documentary evidence to mark the sites of the ancient Norse discoveries in Western Atlantic, including Vineland on the map. After studying at the University of Copenhagen, he became a teacher at the former monastery, of Skelholt, which remains the religious and educational center in Iceland even after Protestantism was introduced in 1551. So nice to see that place is still around. The 1570 original of the map no longer survives, but a copy was made in 1690 and is now in the collection of the Danish Royal Library. Numerous other copies were made by Scandinavian scholars. By matching latitudes with the British Isles, the map shows the northern tip of Vinland being at about 51 degrees north, the same latitude as the southern tip of Ireland and Bristol, England. When this information was transferred to more modern maps, it indicated, among other things, that Sigurður had marked the promontory of Vinland at the same position as the northern promontory of Newfoundland, which was one of the factors that encouraged successful archaeological investigations in 1960 at L'Ans Aux Meadows, which is located at 51 degrees 35'47" north.
So to go back to my question, is it a Viking map or is it the Spaniards who eventually...
It's a Viking map.
Okay, so
it's a Viking map written after the fact.
Oh, so bring that up again.
So it's not for the time of discovery. It was written 500 years later. But this version of the map was from 100 years after that because the original has been lost to time.
Yeah, but it's a recreation, and here's why I'm asking, because you can clearly tell that it's like the regular maps of today, which is measured from north to south.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because Roman maps are measured from east to west.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
There's again, region that was conquered by the Romans. There are multiple maps featuring this region from east to west, and you literally it looks like a completely different landmass, but once you actually look at it from a different angle, you can tell that this is exactly the region I'm familiar with. You're just looking at it from a different point of view. So I'm guessing
from a certain point of view, eh?
Yeah, from a certain point of view. Speaking of Star Wars, but I'm just guessing that the person that recreated this map, we created it in the image of how they are regular to read maps from north to south, as opposed to anything else.
So who knows that reproduction was done by Pordor Porlock's son, also known by the Latinized name Theodorus Thorlacius, which is easier to pronounce.
Slightly.
Yeah, I remember the Church of Ireland. Not Ireland, Iceland. Sorry. All right. So, do you have any more questions on L'Ans Aux Meadows 50?
No, just really wish I could visit it for myself.
Me too. This is one of those ones that, as I've gotten older, and I've been thinking a little bit more, it would be pretty cool to go see.
Yeah.
And as you guys found out today, I don't need a passport to go see it. So
lucky you.
Yeah. So 50. Your topic for next week, is it going to be a surprise?
No. It's actually a part 2 of the topic from last week. We are going to learn even more about the Hebrew language, and most importantly, we are going to learn about the origin of the Hebrew language and how all the letters that we went over last week.
Okay, whoa.
So look like.
There's one at the top that looks like an ox head. And if you scroll down, there's one that looks like a sock. And right below that, a pair of testicles.
I was wondering if you would notice that.
Oh, I noticed.
Yeah.
And there's one that even looks like an eye, too.
Spoilers, man. Spoilers. You're going to learn what all these letters mean, where where the original names from those letters.
I bring that up again.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Okay, so I noticed one in there. It's the fourth one down in the right column. It looks like a fish. That's got nothing to do with Jesus, is it?
No.
Okay. Only reason I'm asking because I know the sign of the fish that you can see on cars and all that stuff nowadays is actually the oldest form of communication between Christians, because in the early day of Christianity, they were basically condemned. So that was one of their secret ways of communicating that, hey, we're here too.
Okay.
That's the only reason I was asking.
So as I mentioned, you are going to learn, sir, about the origin of these letters, where they came from, what they originally meant, what their namesake comes from, and even a few secrets that you may not have known about the English language, sir. And I promise, I guarantee you that episode is perfectly guaranteed to blow your mind.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. You know me, I do like to learn new stuff.
I can't wait to see your reactions and your responses to some of these.
All right. So on that note, 50, where can everybody find you?
You can find me every Thursday on this show right here, the Fun with Flags, and every Monday on The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, where I talk about the greatest show in the galaxy, Doctor Who. And you can also find me on my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek, where I do weekly reviews of every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 to 2022, and reactions whenever I have time to watch anything else other than Doctor Who.
Yeah. And as for myself, you can find me, of course, on this channel, in this show specifically. You can also find me something, not every Monday and Friday, but some over on the Hotel Network doing live watch-alongs of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. And then, we've got something interesting coming up wrestling content-wise that I'm to be involved in that we'll be dropping hints of soon. So definitely pay attention to social media for that. All right, so on behalf of myself and 50, thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week when he teaches me more about the Hebrew language over on Fun with Flags. See you next week, everybody, and don't forget, during this week, let your geek flag fly, because that is who you are. We're geeks at the end of the day. Doesn't matter what form of entertainment we geek about, we're all geeks. So, see you later. Bye.
And happy Leif Erikson Day. Hing-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling.